For more, I want to bring in the Director of Elections and Surveys at CBS News, Anthony Salvanto. All right, Anthony, you have been polling Trump supporters for months now, and the president continues to criticize fellow Republicans, but his base seems to continue to stick by him.
Yeah, you see those approval numbers, which, as Major mentioned, have been largely steady. Inside of that, though, there's a couple of different kinds of supporters that the president has. Major used the word loyal. That's a very good word because he's got about half of his supporters who put Donald Trump ahead of the Republican Party in their minds. They see themselves, first and foremost, as Trump supporters. They vote Republican. It's that Trump supporter label that means more to them when we ask. And so when you talk about whether or not the president can go try to take on his own party or some members of his own party in rallies like you saw last night, that's the part of the base that will feel like and seems to feel like that that's okay, that they're standing by the president. So that's part of it, right? That's part of it and part of why he can do that. There is another segment of those supporters, though, the other half, who are much more conditional, much more transactional. And you start to look at whether or not he can deliver on policy, which is what they want from this president. That's where you start to look and say, they want him to cut deals. They want him to work with Congress. They elected that deal maker president, the deal maker in chief. That's where we want to watch as we head towards the fall, whether or not he can satisfy that part of the base, too.
So with midterms coming up, some Republicans might be wary of criticizing the president, but if his base deviates from traditional Republican candidates, I mean, might it be better for those Republicans, the establishment-type Republicans, to speak out against the president? Yeah,
it's a long way off. But the thing you do watch, and it is unusual to see those skirmishes starting this far out, but the overall tug-of-war you might see is, to what extent does the president have sway over the part of the Republican Party, not just that would turn out in a midterm, but that could turn out in primaries? And again, we get a little ahead of ourselves here, but there is a component of any base, whether on the right or the left, where those who turn out in primaries are more ideological. And if the president holds sway with them, then that has an effect on the kinds of candidates the Republicans run, and that could be where a lot of Republican candidates get nervous facing primaries even before they face a general.
Right. So during remarks in Phoenix Tuesday, the president criticized media coverage of his response to Charlottesville. But how does the president's base feel?
Well, overall, you saw most of the Republicans we talked to felt like he had described what happened in Charlottesville in their minds accurately. But I also look and I compare those numbers, which were strong and high, but not quite as high as he gets for, say, handling other policy matters, like handling the economy or handling terrorism. And I think part of what that tells you is that there is that other half of the base where they're still focused on the legislative process, and they're not as focused as that core part of the base is on things like whether or not the president is seen as fighting for their culture and their way of life, which is what that core really feels, and has that personal connection with him that they say they rely on. And that's the difference, and that's the thing I think you watch playing out now as he starts to mix it up.
Something else we heard the president say on Tuesday, he threatened to shut down the government if he doesn't get funding for a border wall. How would that play out, Anthony, if in fact the president is unable to fulfill his campaign promises like the border wall?
The border wall has been one of those things that every time we poll on it for that base, they want to see it, but they also, many have never been and never said that they thought that Mexico would ultimately pay for it. So there might be a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of forgiveness even if they don't. However, it could be one of those things that really pushes back against that core of the core, that solid base. That's been one of those policies that they came to the president early on, early in the campaign, as we know, and that part hasn't left. Even earlier this summer when we asked, what would make you deviate, or what is it you really want to see? That's always been high ranking. The question, the balance is the implications of shutting down the government. Once that gets into the discussion, will they weigh that against it? That, I think, remains to be seen. But when we get into September, well, we'll poll on that.
All right, a lot to watch. You'll come back and tell us all about it. Anthony Salvanto, thanks so much.
Thanks.